talked about this last DevOps.
No, we didn't.
I said when you hotspot on your Verizon, you get IPv6, and you're like, yep.
No, that wasn't it.
Oh, yeah. If you hotspot on my Verizon phone, I get an IPv6 address.
Once in a while,
Like my phone itself doesn't even have V6.
I don't think the phone.
But then sometimes I will get, because I'll get caught and I'll read it and then I'll like start talking about it.
I mean, it's all just one big tunnel back home.
Right, but the point is there needs to be a V6 endpoint on the tunnel locally, which is your phone. So it needs a V6 address to be a tunnel.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. If it tunnels it all the way home, it doesn't need V6. It doesn't need to have V6. I mean, 6 to 4 can happen.
You have to have a default gateway. 6 to 4 has to happen somewhere, and it happens.
But I think
in this case, it would have to happen on the phone.
My impression, well, I don't know how to read the settings on the phone. Exactly.
As in there in Cyrillic. Or Roman numerals.
Binary actually isn't too bad at Roman numerals, except they didn't do 0.
Yeah. Off by 1 error.
So it was all just 1, 1, 1. Actually, the Romans got it in unary.
Greetings. Welcome to PDX DevOps. If you're here for that, you're in the right place. Beer and pizza's back there.
I was here for the network connection.
Huh?
I was here for the network connection.
Well, I'm sorry about that. You'll be a little disappointed. We've got, I'm blanking on your name again. Tim. Tim's going to be talking about his graphite metrics collection. Was there anyone else who said they were thinking about it that actually managed to show up? Yeah. This person who's being volunteered.
He's speaking for PSD. Yes.
Your name is?
I'm Sage.
Sage? Yep. Sage will be talking about graphite as well.
And Mom Lizzie here. Yeah.
And anyone else who feels like being volunteered by other people. Elemental has provided us this lovely space. And the pizza and the beer. Greg, did you want to?
What's that?
Did you want to say anything?
Oh.
As the senior most representative, maybe, at least from engineering?
Yeah, probably. Well, welcome to Elemental, everybody. I don't know if you guys, how much you guys know about what we do here, but we make video encoders primarily for delivering video to laptops, mobile devices, tablets, things like that. Called over-the-top video. We also do some traditional broadcasts and stuff. I think we're streaming. Are we streaming this?
We're recording.
Oh, we're recording.
It'll be put up at some point in the near future.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting work. We have a group that's doing cloud encoding. Jason here can talk to you about that. We have all our general stack that we're working on is CUDA, C and CUDA for video processing library, C++, and system control and web UI and REST UI is all Ruby and Ruby on Rails. Cool JavaScript stuff, and we're also hiring, just in case you are, looking around for something. Check out our careers website and come talk to me. Who's an elemental here? Just raise your hand. If you're curious about any of these people, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, unfortunately, apparently it's not just the GETS network that's flaky right now.
Yes, the regular network is going slow. I don't know why.
So that's us.
Not hosted in the building.
No, obviously. Some other things of interest that are going on right now. Is there anyone here from ApacheCon or going to ApacheCon? Daniel, okay. That's going on through Thursday, apparently. There's one of the PDX RB sessions, Hack and Help sessions is going on. There's another meeting here on Wednesday, PDX Git. If you're interested in talking about Git, learning Git, all of that, that'll be here as well.
And the network guys know that by Wednesday, you got the gas stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could probably just dive right in if you
Yeah,
want to.
sure.
Go, Tim.
All right, so my name's Tim Smith. I'm going to talk about graphite metrics collection, and mostly focus on what graphite is and how to automate graphite deployments. So I'm going to go over my company. I work for Limelight. Some previous metric systems that people are probably familiar with. A bit on graphite's background. Why graphite is awesome and I think you should use it, and then how to deploy graphite and Collectd, which is how you're going to get your metrics into graphite using Chet. So the quick little Limelight blurb, since everybody likes to do these. Limelight's a content delivery, storage, management, distribution company. We have a traditional global CDN, distributed content storage product, kind of like Amazon S3, video delivery and management. That's the team that I work on, and then we have a site content management product, and it's kind of assumed, I think, at this point that we're hiring. Everybody's hiring. So, a little overview of some of the historic metric gathering systems that people are probably familiar with. You got MRTG, you got Cacti, you have Munin. At some point, everybody here has probably run into one of these. The pros on them, they're very specific to what they do. They usually include server-side polling. And then the reason they're still in existence in a lot of operations is, you know, it's the if it's not broken, why fix it mentality. A lot of people have some pretty complex bash and Perl scripts wrapped around these to keep them up and running and to sort of automate them, and that's kept them going. The cons, though, is they do rely on server-side polling. Server-side polling really doesn't scale when you try to take it to that many metrics, particularly if anybody's tried to scale a Munin server past like 300 nodes. You'll probably run into a lot of issues with that. They use static graphs, and it's usually difficult to get data into them. So, a little background on Graphite. Graphite's a project out of Orbitz, and they open sourced it in 2008. It's written in Python, and the real key difference is that in Graphite, the data collection is all handled on the client side. Graphite's not a system to collect data. It's not like Munin where there's a client and a server module. Graphite purely focuses on getting your data in and a small amount on presenting your data. And it's really a three-part system. There's Carbon, there's Whisper, and then there's a web front end. And the basic idea you can see on the little graphic on the right here that I lifted off their webpage is that some sort of client sends a data point to this Carbon agent, and that interacts with the Whisper database, writes the data out to your file system, and then on the flip side, a user, a sysadmin or whatever, reads that data out. So it's a pretty simple system when it really comes down to it. Why it's awesome, especially versus some of the other systems. Carbon heavily caches in memory and only writes out to disk when necessary. And this is pretty important. 100,000 metrics being collected a minute is not 100,000 IOPS. You can really scale a Graphite server by letting it do most of the work in memory and letting it only write out when it needs to. And it'll write out more than one data point. So you can kind of flex the fact that you're probably stuck with spindle storage. You can create some pretty cool multi-tiered setups with it. Seen some interesting documents on how to scale Graphite out to like 2 million metrics, which is pretty impressive. That's a very large install. You can create some pretty complex rules on how you want data retention and data granularity. You can do some of the same things that you do with RRD, where you can drop granularity as time goes on. But I think the really killer part is that getting data into Graphite is incredibly dead simple. So this is a basic example of how you get data in. You just echo it onto this network connection to port 2003. And really all you're including is a path, and in Graphite, the periods are delimiters for folders. So this is going to be like a big nasty path of folders, server name, and then a metric with a value of 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also put a timestamp in there, but I'm not entirely sure if that's necessary actually. So obviously that's pretty simple. I mean, you can put that into anything. You can put that into a bash script, which I've done before. You want to know when your apps start up, you want to log that, just have it show out. The other reason I think Graphite is awesome is the web UI. It's very simple. It's slightly less ugly than things like Munin and Cacti. But the real killer feature is that you can do some pretty cool mashups. Whereas with something like Cacti and Munin, where you're sitting there and you're trying to come up with every graph that you would think you would ever want to look at 3 in the morning and generating them every time. With Graphite, you can really just go and do some data exploration as you feel necessary. You can use wildcards, you can use mathematical formulas, you can do some pretty cool stuff. And I think this is kind of an example of one of the things that I like to do. You can put this little draw is infinite, it's like a special function they have. And basically I send a simple 1 every time I do a deploy. The end of my deploy chef recipe kicks off this 1. And this function on that draws it as a vertical line. So I can overlay all my deploys on a big graph. I can use the wildcards. I can see every deploy I've done. And I can put that over some of my base metrics. I can look at my load balancer. I can look at error rates coming off my load balancer and tell basically if I blew up my API. Stuff like that. You can get out. You can take minimum values out, take maximum values out. You can do some pretty awesome stuff on the fly. Very simple, and it's incredibly quick. There's also lots of really cool third-party dashboards. You can get all kinds of different dashboards where you can define the metrics that you're interested are in various markup languages, which is why there's so many, because everybody thought it needed to be done again. And you can automate some of those. I've seen some pretty cool stuff with Puppet and with Chef to build those dashboards for all the metrics you care about. So, how to get data into Graphite. Obviously, you could use that really simple NC echo there. You can also programmatically get data in bulk, because you probably don't want to send 1 metric at a time. And there's also some cool aggregators. StatsD is by the Etsy guys. Basically, StatsD lets you just send arbitrary events, and it handles the roll-up. So if you wanted to have a metric of number of logins, every time your application did a login, it would connect to a local daemon and say, hey, there was a login. And on the roll-up period, it would actually just send the message out of what the total count was. It does some cooler things than that, but that's the basic idea, and it makes it very simple to implement counters into your application. On the system side, I think CollectD is really the way to go. And CollectD is really similar to Munin Client, if anybody's used that. It was actually originally designed to write out its own RRD files. It had its own web interface, and it was kind of crappy. But it has some really cool plugins, and it basically can grab data on your system about anything. You can also run arbitrary code in Ruby, Python, and Java, and it lets you deal with various polling APIs. You can get SNMP data, you can get JMX data, you can look up JSON data, whatever you want to get. So I think that's the best way to get system-level data into Graphite. So I'm a Chef guy. There's a pretty cool cookbook for deploying CollectD that's pretty generic. It's a fork of one that was done originally by Atari, and then later on the guy that worked on it started working for Opscode. But this fork is by this guy Brian Barry. He works for the UN somewhere. He's in Italy or something. But it installs CollectD from source if you're on RHEL systems or via package on Ubuntu. And it's very broken out, so that at the base level it just installs the client, and then it installs some base plugins that you might want to use. And then it installs the most important plugin, which is the Graphite plugin, actually send data to Graphite. The reason I like it is it has a definition within it, which is very similar to a lightweight resource provider, that lets you define plugins. So this is the definition for a Memcache plugin, where you can just say, hey, write me out a Memcache plugin, which is really just a text config file, and I want these options passed to it, and I can make these options, attributes coming from application or whatever. So it gives you some cool options there. So here's some sample attributes of how you would kind of configure this in your environment. lifted from my setup. The base plugin, so I want like data on network interfaces, I want load, I want memory, other network stats, I want disk free, I want overall disk, disk IOPS, and I want swap. This is where my graphite server is going to be, and then this is how I want to prefix them. So this I put in my production role in Chef, and any of my servers that are running this within this role will end up under a folder called servers, under a folder called production, and then they'll have each of their server names. You can do some cool stuff with that to kind of lay out your system. I want to store rates. I don't really care about a total count of the number of like disk IOPS. I really care about the rate, and I want separate instances, which keeps things from being all mashed together. And then the last one's just because I do some stupid stuff with HA proxy. And then on the graphite side, there's another really awesome cookbook. It's actually written by Heavy Water, by some guys in town here. It installs graphite from source. There's some pip stuff coming up, and it installs Apache and sets up the Apache site and gets all that going. It also lets you tune some of the carbon settings, which is really important if you want to scale graphite out to anything beyond probably like 50,000 metrics. Runs on RHEL and Ubuntu, and I have some LDAP support that I'm going to push up to it soon. So again, it's pretty simple to set it up. This is basically all the attributes you're setting, what your site name is going to be, where you're going to store your data. Since a lot of people stick them out on like some nice RAID 10 setup or something. Some tunables for Carbon. This really lets you extend Carbon and basically force it into memory versus disk, and then some web authentication stuff. And that's all I have. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I can't actually show graphite, not having an internet connection at all.
Can you talk more about the dashboards that you mentioned? Something else you like, maybe?
I have not personally set up the dashboards before. I've used a few different ones that are out there. I think it really kind of depends on what you want. But if you just like search GitHub for dashboard graphite, there's a bunch of them. You can just basically describe stuff in like YAML and get a nice dashboard. They're really cool if you have like a operation center or something, or a monitor. You want your devs out on the floor to be like seeing various application metrics. Like in the past, we had like our load balancers in there and some pretty key like API metrics. And then you don't have to go, dive in and find them. You can save stuff in Graphite, but the UI is really for exploratory purposes and not for dashboard.
Right.
It's pretty awful for dashboard.
What's the process of installing one of these dashboards?
There's some recipes out there. I assume there's some Puppet stuff for it too.
Okay.
They're usually pretty simple. That's the kind of thing where you'd want to like probably create a template within Chef or Puppet or whatever, because it's going to be pretty custom for your setup.
Yeah, and take it with a grain of salt. This was pretty much one of the first hits for graphite dashboard, but I mean we've already list 5 of them right here.
G-Dash is pretty cool.
Yeah, in fact, he even lists to another list of the tools that work with. Yeah. Some of those are dashboards, some are not, but
Cool.
There's likely something out there that fits what you want. So yeah.
I was going to ask, if anyone had any experience with graphite dashboards, because I've been looking them over myself, and at the moment I'm basically using a static HTML file, which once I get done with the project is going to just be generated by Chef as a Chef template, because it's all the rest of the graph parameters are dynamic. All you have to do is just embed URLs. In fact, I could even show off my halfway done dashboard now if I won't come if there was time, but just to kind of show some of the tricks you can do with dashboard URLs. Or I'm sorry, with graphite URLs.
Well, I mean, what would you want out of a dashboard more than what you've already got of? What would be the big reason to go to something else?
There are some very pretty dashboards out there. There's folks who've done a lot of really nice design work. You can see the images of
Okay,
the graphite
second and third one
dashboard
there.
there. And mine don't look like that.
If your question was what do I want, when Nagios tells me that there's box on low, on a high load or something, I want it to give me a little tiny URL and I can press the button and I can see the load over the last hour.
I've been wanting that too.
So somebody make that work.
Yeah.
Seems like that'd be pretty easy.
Yeah,
It's a predictive path, so.
you'd have to shell out to like something to go get a tiny URL, but other than that, you'd be alright.
Well, I mean, if you actually wanted the tiny URL, if you just wanted to construct the URL programmatically, that's,
Yeah, why do you want it to be tiny?
So it'll fit in my text message.
You can
Why aren't you
generate
using something like XMPP? No.
I suppose I could, anyway.
yeah, but that, I mean, that sounds less like a graphite dashboard and more like integration of graphite into your monitoring system.
And actually, that is another thing, is that graphite is simple enough that for things that are not super critical, it's excellent for monitoring because, again, because you can just pull JSON data. There are Nagios plugins that simply do, that simply pull graphite data, say, okay, give me the peaks or whatever. There's even ones that do dynamic analysis for basically more or less something getting more than a couple of sigmas out of standard DB, out of the mean, and it'll just alert. Even if you have something, a service that is like generally is like that, goes in a particular range, you don't even have to adjust your alert ranges. It'll simply alert you when it deviates, which is just using some of the statistical functions built into graphite.
Yeah, which is fine for detecting sudden increases, but if for the last 3 weeks it's been slowly creeping towards memory exhaustion, you're not going to be not going to be alerted.
There's that. And I guess I realize since we don't have Wi-Fi, then I can't show off my dashboard.
Well, do you want to borrow this browser? Because
I'd love to see.
the other network apparently has some network connectivity.
Oh, it looks. Is there actually? Oh wait, no, that's a power cord. Not a.
Yeah.
Don't steal my passwords.
Well,
But yeah, it's just really awfully simple.
there you go.
And Jake, I'll go next.
Okay.
Uh,
If we can get it projecting again.
I haven't seen snow in a while.
Yeah, snow is awesome.
Yeah.
I want digital projection systems that instead of showing blue, show screen, show snow.
There are some that do actually already. There's
That's
some
so
TVs
cool.
that do that automatically when they lose signal. Thing is, most of the time it's actually just a little MPEG-2 movie that they play out.
So that's what YouTube does when something breaks. Makes it easier to tell that it's broken.
I think about there's a line in I think in a William Gibson novel, this is of course only half-assed and slightly undone, but where they say the sky was the color the sky looked like a broken, like a I think like a broken TV or like a TV tuned to no station.
They're between stations.
Between stations, yes. And that means a very different thing to people of our generation than to people of younger generations. It means the sky was blue. I haven't. Eventually, I'm going to be proxying this stuff through the dashboard thing here, but so this is completely undone. This is just basically a mock-up, except that the graphs are live because all you have to do is link to a URL all you have to link to a graph, and there it is, and it's updated live. So, usual stuff. There's a chef provider that basically just fires off run data every time there's a chef run. That sort of thing. So, and then this is just an example of a single machine with a stacked graph of memory and then a stacked graph of CPU. It's really not very much different from what the system I was replacing, which was just a standard Munin set of graphs. But the nice thing is that, so you see these groups, Redis servers, web servers, util servers, those are dynamically generated, the selection of machines in there. So if we look at, yeah, darn, I'm not quite conversant on the Mac thing. They actually sent me a Mac just so I could do Google Hangout, and I haven't gotten Linux onto it yet. Anyway, so I'm sorry the print is very small and at the top, but look at it.
Let's do this.
Oh, thank you. What a lovely idea. You're so helpful.
Yeah, photos are at the bottom.
Well, it's bigger and it's
Yes.
maybe readable.
So anyway, you look at a graphite URL just to get a graph out of it, or actually JSON data or whatever, starts with a target equals blah blah blah. Target equals and then all the stuff you want to make a graph of. In this case, I'm saying take all of the machines called Tesla-Redis-anything, and then grab their interface, E0, octets, scale it by,
What are you trying to do?
oh, this is trying to, that's not what I wanted.
What do you want?
Oh, I was just trying to jump around.
No, this is ZSH, so Alt B.
Okay, don't worry about it. Anyway, so scale it up by 8 since it's going by octets and I want it to go by bits. And then I want it to make an alias by node because these machines' full name, what would happen on this graph if I didn't do this alias by node is it would have the, where are you? There we go. You can see that, you can barely see there that it just says Tesla Redis 1 PDX and RX. Instead it would have the entire full machine name and the full path to the attribute and everything. So it lets me have nice tidy names for it. But if I happen to add, oh sorry, oh that one, yes. Thank you. Sorry, I just don't know how to drive a computer.
You don't know how to drive someone else's computer.
It's gotten a lot more complicated since we moved up from clay tablets.
Yes.
It's all been downhill since then.
Indeed. So anyway, so basically, since we have this naming system where all of our Redis servers are called Tesla Redis 1 through 23 or whatever, if we add some more, they just automatically get added to the graph. Don't have to worry about it. I mean, literally, this dashboard is just a static file, and it could probably just be left as a static file because as long as we don't come up with new classes of servers to add, then it'll just keep adding servers as we add them. That wasn't the right key. That wasn't the right key either. You were using
Command Alt backtick.
Okay, thank you. There we go. So I just wanted to point out that that was kind of the power of doing graphite here, is that there are these functions that allow you to just select arbitrary machines by wildcard and then group them, mess with the names of them and things like that, and make very pretty graphs that just take care of themselves. Yeah, we've been just going by the standard recommendation of collect D, stats D, like that. I've been using a Python-based collector called Bucky, just because, hey, Python, I like Python. And I guess one more comment about it before I let you guys go from this is that Graphite has a delightfully simple protocol for basically if you want to submit data to it, as I mentioned, it's just a pretty simple TCP thing, which means that we have a bunch of Graphite-based instrumentation, but the head programmer on this project didn't like the way I had set up the Graphite collectors, and he likes querying things from MongoDB. So, oh no, how terrible! I tried to help him out with it, but he was like, no, I want MongoDB. So he spent like, I don't know, 2 hours and wrote a Graphite-compatible MongoDB storage engine because it's trivia. So, and it works really well. So that's all I wanted to say. But thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you so much.
Sorry?
Hi, my name is William. I work at PSU for the College of Engineering. And this is Sage. He's a student worker that works on the Linux team. We also have Spencer here, Colleen, and David. So I have Colleen and I wrote a Puppet module for CollectD, so I'm going to demo that. Nightfly's going to demo some of our Graphite. And I think Spencer has we have a friend called Greg Haynes who works at Idealist, who wasn't able to attend tonight, but he has an awesome dashboard that we have a picture of. But we can show it to you. All right, time to learn Mac. You want to do it for me? Can you move my hands? Can you go to GitHub?
GitHub?
/PDX cat. So the reason we chose CollectD is because it has Solaris packages, Ubuntu packages, and Red Hat packages, and we have to support all of these operating systems. And having packages is really awesome. So we manage all of our configuration management through Puppet. So we wrote a module to support that. At the moment, it supports the 3 operatings I said. I'm planning on adding FreeBSD support at some point, but that is in the works. So in its simplest configuration, you can just include CollectD, and that will install the service and the default operating system configs. We don't really like the operating system defaults because they install plugins that we don't like. So if you want to get rid of those, we have some purge options here that will remove all of the operating system specifics and allow you to manage everything with Puppet. So any plugin or CollectD file that's not managed by Puppet will be wiped out. So that's what purge means in Puppet world. To install plugins, the simple ones like battery and load and all of the ones without configuration, you just do a simple, give it its name, and it will install the file for you. For more advanced plugins, we took advantage of public templates to pass in parameters and stuff. So this is the disk one. In this case, we have a mount point called /u that's mounted over AutoFest that we don't want monitored because that's on the file server. So if you set ignore selected, which is a CollectD parameter, it will ignore that. We also ignore NFS, TempFS, AutoFS, GPFS, procs, and dev file systems as well because we don't want that in our Graphite data. And I'll show you in a moment how that is generated. If you want to get started with this, I have a test directory with some sample files. Here's an example of having purge on and the default. These are just the default ones that come with Ubuntu, I believe. So you can just write that, and we'll install all those default plugins. I think I have more complicated ones. Maybe we didn't write them. I don't have every CollectD plugin written, but we do have a few. Pull requests welcome. My favorite is the OpenVPN one. So in this case, you include this class. You can choose to collect individual users if you want. or you can just collect a user count.
And that's specifically just pinging whenever someone logs in over OpenVPN, or?
Yeah,
what is
it actually tracks the status file for OpenVPN. So whenever someone logs in or logs out, you'll see a graph of usage. It's pretty awesome.
What does tracking an individual user mean?
I think it just increments, or it knows the number of users currently connected to the VPN. I think that's all it knows.
Sure, but
Whatever.
the individual user is going to be like 1 or 0, right?
If you,
Not necessarily. Oh God. Fair point.
you can, yeah, and I think the plugin allows you to track utilization of users over time too. But we have 5,000 users, so we turned that off. We have the syslog module, which is pretty self-explanatory. It turns on syslog for collectd. In our case, we noticed that collectd likes to spam syslog whenever the graphite server is down, and we were having downtime, so we turned that off because it wasn't that useful. Come on, Mac. The more complicated, and then here's the graphite one. In our case, all you have to do is specify the host. We didn't add support for a different port, but that's easily addable if you guys are running it on different ports and the other parameters that graphite uses. collectd 5.1 or above is necessary for graphite. That wasn't mentioned in the other talk. So in case you're on Red Hat and you install the default collectd from Apple, that's only 4, and you need an RPM that's at least 5.1 or higher. Here is our disk plugin. It's kind of like the other ones. I'll show you the templates a little. How many of you guys know Puppet? I don't want to go into too much Puppet. Okay, I'll show you a little bit.
Can you increase font size?
Yeah.
Shift plus.
So this is the disk one.
That good?
This is what the configuration file, like collectd configuration files, load the plugins, and then they have a little like XML stanza, I guess. In our case, we shell out to Ruby here. This is ERB templating, and for each disk that is passed in via array in the Puppet manifest, it produces a disk, and then here's the ignore selected parameter. Guess I can do it. Can you give me a terminal? All right, I need to jump through several hosts. That's not right. Yeah, that's the wrong password. That's awesome. The keyboard is slightly different, and it's screwing me up.
Would it help if I gave you my computer?
Yes, because your keyboard is so.
We could help if you told us your parents.
Yes! Okay. Now I just need to jump through another one. This time I have a key and it's a lot shorter. Don't mind me. That Git repository error is from my ZRC. I don't really know why.
Somebody has too much time on their hands and too much of a fondness for ASCII art.
No, we mined that out to the minions, the volunteers. They made like beautiful StarCraft ones.
Somebody's getting a degree in ASCII art.
I hate this. Okay.
Grad students have to do something.
Yes, yes, we do. Our phones doesn't have color.
All right, finally made it
Loaded in
somewhere.
colors kind of make some assumptions.
All right, so this is one of our web servers.
Maybe you could have it detect the terminal. Thank you.
The main config file is wiped out by Puppet because we didn't like it. But this is what we have left from what. So you can choose to have FQDNs if you want in the graphite database, or you can just send the short name. So that's parameter And then there's some other parameters. You can set an interval on how often you want collectD to send the data. The important part here is this include part. So this is going to include everything in confd, and that's where I store all the plugins that Puppet generates. So the one for load is really simple, load the load plugin. For the more complex ones, like disk, well, that's a terrible one. It was DF, yeah. So the DF one, so I have a white space problem, but in the generation, but this is what that array that I passed to the Puppet manifest generated for me. So it put on all of these file system types. It's ignoring all of them. I don't know what these two do. And that's it. The MySQL, we also have a MySQL one. We haven't been, well, never mind, I'm not going to talk about that. And here's the Graphite one. The only thing I exposed via Puppet is the host, but we could easily expose all of these. Our prefix is collectD and then a dot, and that will create the folder structure under the Graphite. We could expose this and have it so that servers.production would work too. Yeah, so that's how we get data into Graphite. And then we'll have Sage here show you our dashboard, which is a work in progress. Okay. Anyone have any questions about the Puppet module? Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Hello, I'm Sage. Our Graphite install is pretty modest. We monitor around 200 hosts. We collect around 200,000 metrics per minute. In our situation, our Graphite server is also one of our log servers. So we had to do some serious optimizations to make it not compete with the same disks with syslog. In our case, the solution was to cut back the number of writes per second to something ridiculously low, around 10. It only utilizes well under 1 core on our machine, and it gives perfect performance. Our dashboard is a work in progress right now. By that I mean it's kind of a list of links. No. I do not use a Mac regularly, so. Yes.
Doesn't matter. Never going there.
Yeah. All right. We have a pretty well documented infrastructure.
Yeah, right.
I lied.
He almost
but,
said it with a straight face.
Yeah. To aid with generating graphs, I actually wrote kind of a common Lisp wrapper around the Graphite function API, so I can write sort of closure-y style common Lisp for, well, when the Wi-Fi picks up, I'll go back to that. Show off some simple graphs, if I manage to click properly. Whoop. Yeah.
Yeah. Unplug it.
Super secure.
You did say about key launchers, right?
Yes.
Should I mention about the glass door behind him?
Okay.
There's a camera somewhere.
Now make sure
There's one there and one back there.
Graphite makes things really freaking cool. Like this is a composite graph of all of our boxes.
Well, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Almost had it.
Yeah?
There we go.
All right, this is a composite graph of all of our boxes. Short-term load, ordered and the legend down here from highest to lowest, it makes it really freaking easy to figure out what's going on. More complicated graphs are also sometimes I think this does not do what I think it does. Yeah. Oops. This is the graph I was using when I was trying to tune graphite for good performance. Graphite is really good for tuning graphite. Before optimization, the cache size was all over the frickin' place. After setting it so like it would only write to like every like 50, it would kind of line up with metrics received. Tossing it down here, it actually threw it up to being like 500,000 cached metrics per minute, and that's pretty much ideal for us. They all dump out in time, and it works really nice. This is the example of the API I use for generating my links. If you're familiar with Clojure, this will look kind of familiar, and it makes it way easier than dealing with the Graphite's kind of shitty GUI.
Should bring up the IRC one.
Yes. We also have a graph of like currently connected IRC users, which it cycles really nicely.
So you guys know why it cycles like that? At 325? So most of our users are from like the College of Engineering, and they use Screen. And then we have the other IT department for main campus that logs in the morning and logs out at night. So that's why it goes up and down. And then the weekend, it just drops.
Yep. And we did our patches and reboots this Friday, which is yeah.
Kicked us all off.
All right.
You have the Vim email.
I want to know what your graph labeled crazy health graph was.
Oh, okay.
Because it was crazy.
Yes. This is actually just a graph of I think entropy pool size on all of our systems. So like higher density means better reporting. So if it ever gets less dense, something is kind of wrong. Like something is not entirely right with our configuration right now, and I kind of suspect that some stats are being dropped when it redraws. You'll be able to see.
Can you go to the main Graphite page?
Yes.
I like how.
No, I mean our Graphite page. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh. It's kind of just okay. There we go. All right. So this is the default Graphite dashboard. Click on the Graphite folder. So like I said, all of our collect D goes to the collect D folder. And then there's a file for every host.
For a lot of the stats that we don't collect D, we also have. If you're not familiar with the CAT, we kind of run a internship training program for undergrad students, and to make spitting stats into Graphite kind of have a lower barrier of entry. We also let them just make little bash scripts, which we roll out a cron, which will run things from different intervals, and we get some kind of cool stuff like that. Like we can track application metrics, like how many users on a given box are running applications from a small whitelist at any point in time. And some things that CollectD doesn't provide, like CollectD's user metrics are kind of useless on their own. Like if the same user has 10 separate sessions, it'll think it's 10 users. So I kind of got around that by making our own little script here. We've also done some kind of cool composite graphs.
Again.
Oh,
No.
no.
This is the answer we've all been waiting for.
Well, I'm kind of stumped
Is
here.
it PDX cat?
No, it's not. What the hell? He has Wi-Fi, so we can bring this up. Anyway,
Anyways, it's a graph of who's using Vim, who uses Emacs, and
Yeah.
everybody knows who's using more.
yeah, Graphite's functions make it really easy to sum up all the individual stats from a huge number of boxes and display them in near real time.
Can you go back to ours real quick?
What?
Can you go back to our dashboard? And then click on the Wintel folder. So we also have a Windows team in our department, and they manage 600 machines. And they also have volunteers that are part of their team as well. So what they did was they wrote some PowerShell, and they started writing statistics to Graphite. So what we have here is the terminal server, which allows multiple users to connect at once. So this shows the usage for that. Can you remove your data and then add? So this shows the current number of, well, I think their name is broke.
Oh.
Or is, oh yeah, there we go. So this shows the current number of active users on the terminal server in real time. And then we also have total users. So you can see a lot of users just kind of sit on the terminal server and then disconnect and they never kill their session. And then there's the 12 active ones. They also started collecting software as well. Look at the MATLAB one maybe.
Do the Internet Explorer versus Firefox.
Yes, do that.
They're right next to each other.
Actually, I think that's, yeah, you're right. Or is that the iExplore process?
Oh,
Explorer
it
Manager.
might be different. You're right. But
Well,
do it anyway.
Explorer.exe is the Explorer process. iExplorer is Internet
Aw.
Explorer.
I don't think it's collecting data right now.
Does your search tab work on your web UI?
Search?
You mean that thing at the top?
Yeah.
I've never used
Try
it
giving it, like,
successfully.
a
You can
look
when
at
you
it.
press the
And just look up
the
for-
flop one, you can when you press the dashboard button,
Yeah.
that one
so
seems to
it
work.
only populates your Whisper index when you initially initialize it, and so and it just sits there with like some default Carbon stuff. And so I just wrote a Python script that populates it, crawls through your Whisper root, and then just populates it and puts it there, so you can actually like look through stuff, you know, which is really handy if you have like tons of metrics. So put that on like a cron job or something.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like this is our graph of system pool entropy, and denser is better. Right here, you can kind of tell that not as dense. So this particular metric is being dropped for some ridiculous system-wide or environment-wide usage. Entropy usage change happened, and I think dropping stats is way more likely. Cool.
Okay, so this is the main dashboard interface. They also have a float experimental database, or dashboard, I mean, sorry. Flat. Is it flat or float? It's flat, I think. Click on that. Click on it.
Where's it at?
Up at the top.
Up
Fly.
top.
No, no, no.
So this kind of gives a little bit of a prettier one. So so do web or do collect D dot or
Under
in
metric.
metric collect D dot star or web star dot load, I guess. Dot load. Get to again,
Yeah.
and then yeah.
Oh.
Or you just have to type out short term and then click enter. It's kind of stupid that way. So this is much prettier, and also if you mouse over it, it will show you the value on the right hand corner as well at that point in time.
I think you can also do like
So what is this? How do you
zoomy
get
things.
This is the
So the other ones are like RD tool, right?
Yeah.
It makes a graphic on the server, and then you just request it over URL.
Yeah.
In this case, you have JavaScript.
Yeah. Flot is a graphing library. So this is just a thin wrapper hooking the Flot graphing library into the graphite actual data.
That's so good.
There's no end.
The other thing you can do with this thing is do a
oh wow.
zooming.
You could
Yeah, I
draw
forgot
box.
about that. You can zoom in.
So,
Can you draw the other one?
not in this one, no. Weirdly. Actually, apparently so. Yeah. No. Oh,
best part about
sometimes. Okay.
Sounds like a back dragging problem, maybe.
Yes.
The best part about this one is there's no back button. Once
Yeah.
you come here,
Then you have to go, you know.
Do we have the link to Greg's thing?
No, I can't find it.
It's in your RFC logs.
No.
Oh, and there's one other interesting thing with this interface, is if you drill down to a certain time period and then hit, I think, this. Oh, I'm wrong.
No.
Oh, that'll generate a link here to that graph. Never mind. I thought it might generate a link to the normal graph,
Oh.
but it does not.
The point to understand about what Greg did is the two graphite dashboards that you've seen already were based on they are to the first graphite we saw as this is to a Greg's dashboard, right? So he's actually got a static HTML website that uses the Flot library directly and just asks for the data from the graphite server. And that means you get click and drag and zoom in.
Yep.
And he like kind of like what you were doing is he abused that HA proxy stat information, and so he can drill down and be like, well, this is how much time I spent in cache before I forwarded it off to a node.
Can gather way too much HA proxy data.
Yeah.
Kind of hurts when you have like 30 load balancers. Like, that'll blow the server up. Is any of the bingo stuff available?
In such that it's been running and we haven't touched it since you set it up.
Okay.
I can, the problem with it is it's not serving on anything but localhost, so I have to tunnel it out if I want to access the web interface, which I can do, but
Then I might be able to
yeah.
as well. Okay.
So how is graphite in terms of resource demand?
With default settings, it was pretty bad. With my very naive thinking that, zero caching sounds really good. I want that. It was even worse. Setting it so it does a lot of caching, it's actually pretty mild. It lives cooperatively on one of our log hosts on the same disk that does syslog, and it's utilized in less than 1 core at any point in time.
So set the caching up and it's okay.
Yeah.
There's also like a Megan Carbon branch that's currently in development. That's supposed to be in the next release. That's supposed to have huge performance gains for scaling up.
And it also simplifies, like if you want to have like multiple aggregators on one machine, it makes it easier. Right now it's kind of complex.
And those are the resource usage for the, graphite machine. While collectd is TCP, statsd is UDP. So if you wanted to have logging from an app where you don't care how bogged down graphite is and statsd is, you're just flinging shit out there. Statsd is pretty good for that because you just fling out a UDP packet and, well, it either gets there or it doesn't, and you don't care.
Yeah.
You hope the next one does better.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know. You don't even know if it's possible to do better. Maybe the last one got there. You don't know. It's UDP.
Has anyone played with Python Diamond? All right, go to the GitHub page for Python Diamond. So it's also a stats aggregator for Graphite, and it's written directly for Graphite. I've been looking at it in additional to collectd. The reason I went with collectd is because it worked on Solaris as well. I haven't tried Diamond. It's a Python thing. It has a lot of plugins that I kind of want. There's a lot of Puppet plugins and some other stuff. If you scroll down, so it's all in Python. That guy wrote it. Keep going.
Well, that's a good start right there.
Yeah, success story. That's a terrible readme, by the way. Go to their wiki. Sorry, all this cool stuff's on the wiki. Scroll down. Click on collectors, I think. So, here are all the collectors for Python Diamond. Can you bring up another tab with the collectd plugins?
I don't know if I still have it open.
There's like a varnished one that collectd doesn't have as well.
Yeah, that might be a while before it comes out.
Cool.
So let's see.
Does anyone ever build like redundant graphite servers in case your data is just that important that it can never go down? How would you put something like that together?
Put it in a RAID.
What's that?
Put it in a RAID.
Okay.
Well,
That's just your disk though. But
Can you send it to 2 servers?
UDP, you could.
can you like DNS round robin?
Set it up as a multicast address.
Well, so the problem with like a DNS round robin is that each one of them is only going to get some of the statistics. So all your numbers are going to look really funny.
Eventually
You can do that multiplied by 2.
But his point is pretty good, that as long as you're only doing UDP things, why not pick a site local UDP address, or a multicast address?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a
So
second
apparently
data.
people do talk about it. In fact, yeah, there's an issue about in Collect D about sending it to multiple graphite servers.
And it's still open.
Actually, I
And
think
it's
this,
still open.
yeah. That might be the plugin though. CollectD used to have a plugin for Graphite that was third party, but now it's built into CollectD.
Ah, here we go. Set up graphite to use federated storage.
What does that mean?
And
What's
carbon
federated
relay.
storage?
So
I'm not sure what they mean by it. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Well, without spending the time to actually read in, it's some way of hooking multiple graphite servers together. Something you should look into.
I mean, you get some of that with that carbon relay stuff they were talking about too, where you can basically just tell it to almost act as a forwarder, but it wouldn't really work if the first one goes down.
Right. Is anyone monitoring Graphite graphs with some sort of monitoring solution?
At one point, I had it, not the current company I'm at, but looking at it with the works pretty well.
Cool. Because we wanted to do it for temperature, right, Spencer?
Right, so one of the things we were able to do in our previous monitoring solution before we swapped it into Nagios was, it was a unified thing, so the data was there right next to the monitoring. And so you could say things like, if the room in this temperature, which is collected by SNMP, you could say like 80 degrees pages, but you could also say if it's driven by more than 2 degrees an hour for more than 3 hours pages, because that means, some cooling device has failed somewhere. We have yet to tape Nagios and Graphite together correctly to do that. It should be possible. As I understand it, Graphite can calculate its own derivatives, right?
Yeah, you would just have Nagios look for a certain value, but you'd be looking at
The derivative.
whatever the function that you chose was. Yeah, like I want, I want standard deviation, and then just look at a change there over a certain value.
Well,
I mean, you've got like 50 functions you can apply.
Yeah, okay.
So something there would probably give you what you want, but the implementation I saw is always pretty simple. It's just like value range.
So does anyone have any other questions or anything? they
I'm
wanted to
curious
bring
if
up,
anybody
or-
has ever used OpenTSDB, which is like similar to Graphite, but Hadoop backed. I think it's more for like data mining, and I've heard it scales a little better, but nobody.
it's not as pretty.
It's definitely not as pretty. It's pretty. It's pretty ugly. Yeah, I think if you're using that, you're more using it for data mining and less for looking at graphs.
if you want really pretty but substance-free graphs, graphene is cool.
Should also search for G dash.
Yeah.
G-Dash is pretty cool. Writing the configs for that is ridiculously easy too.
Yeah, that's a great term to search for.
GitHub or something.
Minus science.
Yeah.
And if you hit the that link right there at the top, that one.
So these?
Yes, those.
Oh yeah, you can get little RPM style gauges.
Yeah, if you get little gauges, you can
If
get
you
little
really miss
things.
SolarWinds,
You
can blow this bad boy up.
You could do interesting stuff with the when you're designing graph or dashboards with this. The default, if you initialize it, is to use a sample data provider, which just generates random data, which is what this is. But then you can swap that out with actual graphite stuff, and it has. I believe it is very. If you go to the GitHub page for it again, and scroll down, the configuration is down a little bit. There you go, and then if you go down farther, it says basically you have a label and you have a graphite graph URL with format JSON at the end, and then it just starts polling live. So those static HTML pages that were showing images, you could use the same URLs and drop them into this, and then they would update in real time. But
So you use G-Dash before?
Yeah, I had G-Dash going at the company I was at last.
Oh, one of Ari's projects.
Yeah.
Can we see it in action somewhere?
Yeah, there.
That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
Does it update live or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a refresh. I think it's like 30
Scroll down
seconds.
to the
Live.
Scroll down to the config. I think keep going maybe. So this is what the config looks like. A little DSL.
That's what we.
It's super easy to write.
Yeah, we used that because it was super easy to template it out.
We use
It was very handy.
the NVD3 graphic library, and some percent, so it works in the
I got the bingo graphs up, but they're not actually useful.
They don't have to be useful.
Yeah. Well, and we haven't been running them lately because they required Marcus to SSH into things, and it's something to be collecting at the moment. But if we look back at August, this was an attempt to. We had an API, and our application was making requests directly to that API, and it's not deciding to recognize that.
Here, play it. I'll fiddle. You keep talking.
Yeah. I haven't actually been able to get it to a point where it has a good display of this, but we were basically wanting to reduce the number of requests that our app was making to the API. So every time we made an API request from our app, we just logged it to statsd, and so it was figuring out which endpoints were getting called the most, separated out by like get, put, post, delete categories. And I don't know why it doesn't. Oh, actually, hold on. Haha. That's not HTML for it.
Oh, that'll work. Unless it's the cable.
Where's the other end of it? No. Oh well. Not the most interesting graphic you can.
Let's choose the VGA one.
No.
Huh. I guess it just doesn't like your laptop.
Guess not. There, we battle. VGA input?
Anything on your end?
No, nothing useful. It's fine.
Do you need to plug it into the other one?
No, they're the same. My laptop is, or earlier was flashing that it had figured out that there was a display connected or disconnected, but no. Oh, well.
It's seeing something because it's blinking.
Exactly, but no. Not interesting.
So those are the people that planned on talking. Does anyone else wish to?
So it looked like, how easy is it to extend collect to something like PLCs or those kind of devices? Like programmable logic controllers or pull metrics and stuff like that?
So it's not really pulling metrics, it's pushing them. So if you can get your PLC to talk TCP or UDP and just blurt out a packet, it's trivial to get it to dump into Graphite. Because I don't know if you noticed earlier, there's the, if I can bring it up.
The client gets installed locally and is pushing data out.
Collect D is a daemon that runs on a machine and pushes data, yeah. But if you wanted, yeah, here we go. I mean, if you want to get Graphite data out, I mean, with stats D and collect D, it's almost identical to this. It's a TCP or UDP packet with really not much anything more than a string, a space, a value, optionally a space, and a timestamp. If you don't include the timestamp, it assumes now, according to the Graphite server. So if you wanted to do little embedded things, it might be, I mean, if you wanted to get collect D running on it, or it might be easier to just
Pull from the central console that's talking to PLC.
Yeah. What do you do for security? You just flood it? Nothing.
You can send anything. You can blacklist data, and you can whitelist data. But for the most part, I mean, that's part of the cool part is if you just send data to it, it just starts creating folders and starts creating metrics.
Yeah, for the most part, it assumes that if you can talk to it, you're authorized to talk to it.
Can you put another layer in there, like SSL wedged in there somehow, or I don't know?
You could, but most of the time that's introducing delays and processing overhead that you don't want to deal with. So I mean, sure, if you want to. Yeah.
So, backing up, so pushing up is not secure, but pulling down, you would be more secure because you've got multiples and stuff. Is that
Yeah, you logging in as a user of Graphite, you're authenticated.
Yeah, you can put,
It's
you
just
know, basic
hosted on
auth or whatever
Apache
you
or
want.
Nginx or whatever you want. So.
Yeah, you can put whatever kind of web authentication logic you want in front of it.
And it keeps track of the user, so you can like save dashboards and stuff like that. So if you have a dashboard that you always generate, you can save it and go back to it later.
I had the impression you can pull individual values out of Graphite as well. Or is that true?
Yeah, you don't have to view it in graph form. I mean, you can consume it as JSON if you want to see those graphs and consume it into some other application you have.
Yeah, you can also dump the CSV or SVG, or there's a lot of formats like supported.
Oh.
And all you have to do is change the format flag in the URL.
Well, that's what graphing was doing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just looking at the JSON.
Yeah, I forget. There was one of these where they basically said add ampersand format equals JSON to the end of your Graphite URL, and you've got the raw data.
Yeah.
And that's what makes like integrating it with something like Nagios or Zabbix or whatever your monitoring solution is like pretty easy because you're really just writing some sort of plugin that grabs that data and interprets it.
afraid I don't have much else for this. Does anyone, any other discussions people want to have, or?
I just have something to throw out there. It's not related to this directly, but one, I'm curious if anyone's run into this, and just as an FYI, because we've spent some time beating our heads recently. So we had a user call our support up and say that they were having problems with our website, and it was specifically when they were at home, and we narrowed it down to when they were on an AT&T Wi-Fi device. Turns out AT&T is very recently, because we've now at least verified this is happening to some other big players out there, but AT&T is not fixing it, that they have installed proxies in their 4G LTE network that are stripping white space out of cookies. And in theory, so we're guessing that they're doing this to, say byte space, and in theory, they're probably trying to be smart and doing it outside quotes and all this. But one of the cookie aspects very specifically requires a space in one very particular place of the header, and it breaks Apache's auth, because Apache's auth is very strictly following the spec. So they log in, but then a whole part of the app fails because their cookie that they send back to our server is completely void.
Because they're not actually logged in, because somebody's messed with their cookie.
Logged in, right? Somebody's messing with their cookies. So just one is FYI, if you have people on the AT&T network, you may run into this. And AT&T has so far vaguely admitted that it is their problem and that they have no intention of fixing it.
And they knew that because they're AT&T.
In as much real answers as you can get from them at the moment.
Well then.
Exactly. Let's tell your people to go to Verizon.
We're the phone company.
Good to know.
Just interesting, yeah.
Have there been any news stories about that?
So there aren't. Well, I haven't seen any active stories out there. We have heard there's a forum post on AT&T that's got users that has ops people like us actually now posting patches to Apache code to work around it, because they're like, AT&T is not fixing it. Here's a workaround if you really desperately need one. I've seen Ruby on Rails workarounds and some for the Apache that, people have said, well, if it's coming from AT&T's range, basically, ignore this. Because it's harmless in the sense of you get your data. They're just breaking the spec, and anything that follows the spec is going to break. I have not seen big news articles about it yet. I've heard rumor that it is actually affecting some big sites, like, people who at least have money, like Match.com and some big SaaS companies, who are out there. Which is probably why AT&T is sort of admitting that it is them, but they responded to our customer with will not fix, which may mean that it's the vendor they bought the proxies from. I don't know. But, yeah.
Yep, that's us. You should do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. We've tried to apply some heat. Right now, unfortunately, it's just like a customer, but we've definitely verified it and found enough proof that it's really happening.
Well, that explains that last batch of date recommendations I got.
I think LiveJournal was another. There were a few sites that were mentioned as potentially having had the same problem.
Yeah, this Debian bug looks quite related.
Quickie header.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
My personal strategy would be to, like, if I detected that, to redirect them to customer support for AT&T.
Yeah. We've actually toyed with doing a few things, some less nice than others.
How did you debug that?
Yeah, really.
Well, there were a couple of things. One, was just getting the basics and narrowing down and realizing that we weren't able to reproduce it on other networks, so figuring out what exactly they were doing. And then we reproduced it on our end on a few phones. It's actually seems to very specifically be 4G too, because I believe if you use an older 3G AT&T phone, you don't see the problem. And then we have one of our engineers start looking at some of the cookies that were coming in, because it's the cookie we receive at the server end that's the issue. We could see it from the other end, like when they were doing testing, sending stuff, and it was fine. It's when our server receives it, and so we finally just put a laptop on somebody. Found an engineer who had an AT&T iPhone and just connected a laptop to it and did some testing and looked at the server and basically realized that all the cookies
else have any PSAs to make?
I've heard of other stuff like that where there's service providers essentially man-in-the-middling people and changing things in order to get increased bandwidth out. And there's like one where it's a browser, a mobile browser, that actually put the SSL on the server side. And so there was no, and I think it didn't actually, I'm not sure as far as like the user agreement, whether or not it informed people that meant that the service provider could then read all of their stuff, even the encrypted stuff.
They didn't actually do the SSL over proxy.
Yeah.
I saw some. And then potentially, like if it's a proxy, it could leak information to other users of the same service.
This thing's nasty just because it's, something you can't fix, but your customers are going to completely yell at you about. There's almost, without doing hacky stuff like screwing around with on-off, and actually patching it yourself. There's little to do about it.
You had something you were starting to...
Yeah, it's just another tangent. We started seeing some really interesting behavior from AWS. You buy the high I/O, high network bandwidth, and if you're regularly above 1 megabit on a stream, and you're trying to progress your way into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, where your limits are, they'll slowly taper you down to a solid 1 megabit. And we had to get directly in contact with AWS, and they're like, no, we didn't. Literally 30 minutes later, whoop, straight up to 5. So.
Any other places want to do the we're hiring spiel? Guess not. Well, unless anyone else has anything they want to talk about, thank you all for coming.
I got through into next CC, so I had to turn on. What's that?
Oh, did you?
Is that what you're doing? Into next CC and just allow cloud.
Yeah.